Hey, folks, welcome to the High Note. I have a great guest with me today. I'm Chris Nielsen, your host, and with me I have Stuart Wheatman, and he's a musician, composer, a minister or pastor, if you will, and also a brilliant programmer. You've got some really cool things that you do in, like, I don't know where you find your spare time, but in your spare time, you make some pretty cool things. Before we get started, I want to put out a special thanks to Piebox and Slack for allowing us to use their tools and communicate, collaborate, and all those fun things on the Composer Exchange. If you'd like to learn more about our community, hop over to the Composer Exchange. I just kind of updated the website over the holidays here. You can connect and find out a little bit more, and we'd love to have you participate if you're a composer and you're into this kind of stuff. With that, Stuart, welcome. Thank you for joining me today.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
I must have hit the mute button already because I haven't been annoyed with an echo, so this is a good thing. You have a very colorful background. Tell me about the background, and then I want to get into your story here. But how did it? That's Van Gogh, isn't it?
That's Van Gogh, yes, yes, in the background.
But
That's
now,
I
that's
did a
before you
little.
cut off his ears.
I presume so. I can see one ear there,
Yeah.
but this
Well,
it's a bit of an amalgam between. It's one of these pictures from deep space from. It's either the Hubble. I think it's not Hubble. I think it's the new telescope they've put out. So it's one of those pictures from there mixed with a Van Gogh. I just thought it'd be nice to mix them up for a nice, interesting background.
it is. You used that like in our composer exchange when we do the harmony chat. You've had sheep in there. You've had all kinds of fun stuff. This is a nice, colorful one. Well, let's get started with your story, your kind of your origin story. How did you get, when did you get into music? And then you've got a really interesting path because you've taken on, being a pastor and you're running a church. You've done a lot of programming, and you're doing these wonderful compositions. So tell me, how'd you get into music? Tell me about that journey to where how you got to where we are today and got you really excited about
Cool.
doing cinematic composing.
Okay, so music really. I wasn't brought up with music. When I was a child, I did have a guitar in my bedroom. It was one of these old beaten up guitars with strings falling off, and I used to look at it, thinking to myself, one day I'm going to know how to play that. But I never did learn as a child. But it was many years later when I became a Christian, when I was about 16 years of age, got connected with the local church, and then. Before too long, my family wanted to move to Wales. We were living in England at the time, and they decided they wanted to move to Wales. And
Oh,
I
is that where
just,
you are now? Is that where you
yeah,
are now?
lived in Wales, in Bryn Mawr, in South Wales valleys. Um, and I just felt right to sort of learn the guitar, really, that there was people in church playing the guitar. But the church I was part of in England before, they had musicians and everything. They didn't need any extra musicians. But when I moved to Wales, I joined a smaller church that didn't have many musicians, and it was really through that a guy that used to play every Sunday, he used to play rhythm guitar. He invited me back for lunch and said, are you interested in learning the guitar? And I'd actually bought myself a guitar just before moving to Wales, and I was teaching myself chords and that sort of stuff. So he just each Sunday he would teach me a few more chords, and I'd learn how to play simple songs. And then before long, I was playing on a Sunday morning, and before very long, I was actually leading the worship and preparing the songs for each Sunday, that sort of stuff.
Be
Um,
kind of careful what you volunteer for, because all of a sudden,
and there was a guy who joined the church who had previously had a Christian band, and he was looking to start up another Christian band, like a worship band. And I was really keen to be part of that. So initially, I was part of that and playing acoustic guitar, and then the bass player that was in the band went a little bit off the rails, and we suddenly didn't have a bass player. So I was asked if I'd like to try to learn to play the bass, which was, I was really interested to learn, and thoroughly enjoyed playing the bass. And really through that, I think through playing the bass, when you learn bass guitar, you have to learn a bit of the theory of music. and how chords are put together, that sort of stuff. So I basically learned quite a bit of theory through playing the bass guitar. I don't actually read music, so that might surprise you, but I can work out music from a music stave and that sort of stuff. But I would need a long time to work out how to play a piece of music. So I'm not proficient in that sense, in terms of, I never had piano lessons or anything like that. But I know a lot of theory because of.
You use piano for entering your information into your DAW, and your DAW, you're using Cakewalk, if I recall.
Yes, I use Cakewalk for that. Yeah.
So you somewhere along the line you did have to, and maybe this was with your theory training, you did have to learn the basics of piano, at least so you can kind of use it as an input.
It's a different method of learning. So it's not the classical way, really. The classical way is you learn to read music, and you learn to basically play what's on the stave, really. Whereas the jazz way is a bit different, because you learn to play by ear and you learn to improvise. The way that I learned really was more to do with having like a G major chord or something, and knowing what notes on the fretboard will go along with that. So that was my path to sort of learning the theory of music. And initially you learn the root of the chord, then you learn the octave, then the perfect fifth, and then the major third, the minor third, and it becomes more and more complex the further you go. But that's how that was my path into learning music.
Well, it seems like so the piano gives you kind of a good visualization, because you can kind of see it in a linear sense, whereas the guitar isn't linear, because you're jumping between strings and their fourth or whatever the distance between them. So would you take the what you learned on the piano as far as stacking thirds, and then and because you don't really stack them the same way on a guitar. How did you make that transition, or that translation?
Well, basically, what I learned was shapes on the guitar. So you learn the shapes for different intervals, and then I suppose equally, then I then go to the piano. I've always sort of fiddled with the piano and try to play it by ear, if you like. But then when you start to learn composition and join a composition type course, then you have to put that into practice. And when you start creating things on the DAW, you've got to put the theory that you know from the one instrument into practice on another instrument. So I can play the piano and I can play stuff, but if you gave me a piece, even a very simple piece of music, I wouldn't be able to play it, by sight reading or anything. But I could probably work something out by ear. If I heard something, I could probably work out on the keyboard how
you can work it out, and then look at the page, and everybody's going, "Hey, wow, he could read." You can fake it, right?
Well, not even that good, I'd say. But with regard to the cinematic composing, this was a course that I joined. Cinematic-composing.com. That was my pathway to the more sort of the sort of compositions we're doing now. And then I did a simple course on there. It was on a special offer and stuff, so I did that. And then there was Tony. Sorry, what's Tony's surname?
Domino.
Tony Dominic. Yes.
Dominic.
So he's such an excellent musician, and he's really he's such a great teacher of harmony. I saw him advertising his course, and I thought I really want to do that course, because it's really up my street in terms of I've got a real heart for new forms of music and new ways of finding out things that have never been found out before. New expressions of music.
That was within Composer, the Cinematic Composer.
Yes,
you saw that one. Okay, all right, because he also has his own thing but it's all in Spanish.
Yeah, it's all in Spanish. So I saw his course, but at the time my finances weren't enough to be able to afford the course. But then they had like a deal where you could just try out any of the courses just for, I think it was for 2 days or something, or 24 hours. So I focused on that course and tried to do as much of it as I could to learn as much as I could. Since I've actually joined the course for proper, but it was one of those things. I think it was a glitch on a system, but I was invited to come on the cinematic on the harmony course.
On the harmony chat. So
Yeah, on the harmony
got to go
chat.
to
So
yeah. So then that's how we met.
that's how we met. That's how that started up. But since then I've actually joined the course proper. But it was a glitch on the system before. But Tony was very humble, and he said, "Well, yeah, go ahead and you join us each week, and you do the compositions as well." So I was sort of thrown in a little bit at the deep end. However, before that, I've had such an interest in music for so many years, and as I say, it's particularly the creative side of things. So I came across a book by Joseph Schillinger called The Mathematical Basis of the Arts. And that was many years ago. I read that, and I was absolutely amazed by it, because he was coming up with all sorts of theories as to how art actually works and the mathematics behind art. And it was beyond me, but I was as I was reading it, I was thinking, this is amazing. And in that book, he often referenced another book of his called the Schillinger System of Musical Composition. So I went to a local library and I ordered that book, and
yeah, big thick one, the thick one. You have that one
in 2 volumes, yeah.
Wow.
So basically, I've been studying that for years, trying to work out how it all. I'm not there.
Okay, so this is a segue, because this is the other part of like who you are. You somewhere in the middle of all this, while you're playing guitar and working through your church world, you figured out how to program somewhere, and you actually created an application which we played with in one of our exercises with the Composer Exchange, that goes through all of Schillinger's kind of approaches, and it looks pretty. It looks like a guitar, and you programmed it to do all these cool exercises. Really, really neat. Tell me how you got into programming, and obviously I think Schillinger, had some inspiration in wanting to do that. Did you do programming just for this, kind of the sake of programming, or did you go like, well, hey, I want to do this musical application, and I need to figure out how to program in order to do that? How did you get into all that?
So it was in the 80s really that I got into programming. It was really through having a home computer. My dad bought us initially a Sinclair ZX81 with 1K RAM. It was.
I did the Atari 24. So anyways, keep going.
You could have the 16K RAM pack as an extension on the back. Basically, you would.
Wasn't that like a cartridge? It was like this,
yes,
like yeah,
it was like a brick on the back, and basically you could program in the basic language. On the ZX81, once you typed in a page of information, it would say out of memory error. That's how much RAM it had. But then I progressed from there onto a ZX Spectrum. One Christmas, my parents bought me a Sinclair ZX Spectrum, so I taught myself from the manual how to program in basic language, and I started writing games programs in BASIC. So I'd sort of been interested in programming for quite a number of years, and I suppose what I'm interested in is creativity. I'm quite artistic. I love art, love drawing, love painting.
My other question is other kinds of art that you're into?
Yeah, very much so. I suppose initially I wanted to be an artist. I was very much into drawing, but I suppose more of my creative side has come out now recently through music than through art. But I think I will return to art at some point. But what really fascinates me is new things, creating new things that haven't been done before. So yeah, the thought of writing programs is another form of creativity. And initially, I'd come up with an idea of chord shapes on a guitar, and I created it wasn't a program, but it was actually a slide, if you like, made out of paper with different chord shapes. So you just move the central thing, and it teaches you all the different chord shapes along the neck. So this was just a cutout thing that I made. But then what I did is I thought, well, it'd be good to make this into a program. So I then wrote a basic program using Sinclair Basic, and I I came up with this chord program where you just basically work out different chords on a guitar fretboard. Um, and alongside that, I was reading Schillinger as well, and I thought, wouldn't it be great to actually put some of Schillinger's ideas into practice and have a chord program on the computer that would actually be able to play new scales that you'd not heard of, or new chords that you'd never heard of, new progressions, new
Based on
tonalities that.
yeah.
Yeah, so that's how it started. It started on the Spectrum years ago, uh, but it was very limited what you could do with the Spectrum. So I then learned later on in life. I learned Java. I'm not that good at programming in Java. I'm okay, but I'm not brilliant. So the program that I showed you is actually written in Java, and what it does, it basically it gives you different scales, any possible scale if you like, from a selection of 12 notes from one octave. You can put in your own scale, and it will work out the chords that go with that scale, and it will play them for you, and it will tell you what they are, and it will also work out the cadences from those chords. So this is the amazing thing that Schillinger came up with, was a whole system of using new tonalities and working out where the cadences are for those new tonalities. So that's what the program's about, and that was my pathway to learning programming and to actually writing that program.
Now, with that program, are you putting it out commercially for sale? Do you have a website where people can go and learn about this and or your music?
Not yet, and I haven't put out my music yet, on a website or anything like that. But I think that's something I'd like to do. I'd like to get something up and running. I
Your
just
New
need to.
Year's resolution, 2024, right?
Yeah,
Well, I know from playing with the app, it's about ready for prime time. It's pretty good. There's probably a couple things you might tweak here and there, and I don't know. I didn't beat it up enough to try and find any bugs, but
yeah.
go through the right process and everything. It's a nice little app.
Thanks,
Uh,
Chris.
Especially if you could get it to integrate into a DAW system, similar to how Scalar works. It was another one that we did a little, little
Yeah.
work.
Well, that's what I did manage to do. And probably you wouldn't be aware of that side of the app. But basically, when you run a chord progression on the app, a chord cycle, it will create a MIDI file on your wherever you've got the app installed.
And
It
you
will
can
create a
bring it over.
MIDI file, and you can just drag and drop that into your DAW. So it will actually do that, and it will also. One of the big things in Schillinger was he came up with a whole theory of rhythm, and you can put Schillinger type rhythms in there as well, and it will play it according to his rhythms. So yeah,
Cool.
it's a bit sort of involved.
I bet there's a way to actually have it integrate into the actual interface. Maybe it has to open a plugin on the side, open the application, but there's a
Yeah,
plugin that connect to your DAW or something like that.
it would need to be programmed in C++, I think,
Instead of Java, you mean?
instead of Java. Yeah, and it would need to be programmed as a VST instrument. So
Yeah,
yeah.
but the beauty is you've done all the roadmaps there.
Yeah,
You
it's all there, but there's an awful.
basically just go, here you go, guy. Go, send me a bill.
Yeah,
There's plenty of programmers.
maybe I have thought about that as well. I've thought about people that do program VSTs. I've been pondering contacting someone and actually saying, would you be interested in turning this into a VST and maybe going halves
I
and.
think you have a market for it. It's pretty cool. You also came up with another system. I forgot what the lesson was, but you have this kind of flywheel. Is that what you were talking about or did that evolve from, you're working with frets and the paper, and then you have this wheel for being able to figure out, I forget what was the theoretical concept with that? Is that the
Yeah,
Neo?
so it's a wheel. I've got one down here if you want me to.
Yeah, show us. That'd be cool. I saw something like that online that somebody else had, but it wasn't
Yeah,
a wheel. It was like a poster. You could get like a mouse pad with it or something like that. But oh,
yeah.
cool.
There's similar things online, but but this is a bit different to anything that I've seen. There are sort of chord wheels and that sort of stuff, but what this is a chord substitution wheel. But it uses a lot more substitutions than people would normally use. So, people are aware of the flat five substitution in jazz and that sort of stuff. And I guess in gospel harmony, they use so many different chord substitutions, and perhaps a lot of it is by ear in that sense. But what this is a theory whereby you can use many different substitutions, not only for the dominant chord to replace the dominant chord, but for all of the chords. So the one chord, the two chord, the three chord, the four chord, the five chord, the sixth chord, the seven chord.
You actually in our harmony group, you actually presented what I thought was, the foundation for a really good book about the chord substitutions, and you actually have most of the text done. So folks watching this, in 2024, he's going to have a website, and there's going to be a great application that does some cool stuff around the Schillinger concepts. And if you're not familiar with Schillinger, look him up. He's pretty amazing innovator in music in the turn of the century, right? Is that about the right time, I think?
Yeah, I guess it was 1930s, is it?
Okay.
I'm not exactly clear, but
and then you also have essentially a book on chord substitutions and a whole methodology for that, along with this groovy little wheel that you'll probably turn into another kind of tool at some point as well. But now, what inspires you the most about music nowadays when you're thinking of writing? You have we all have things going on other than our music. It's a part of who we are. But what inspires you and gets you excited about the music that you're writing these days?
I suppose what inspires me really is I have a faith in God. So I believe there is a God, and that He's made each one of us creative. He's a creator God, and we reflect that aspect in our lives of creativity. So my faith is a booster to that in terms of producing new forms of music or new forms of art that have never been done before. And it's just, I guess it's that eagerness to discover new things and to create new things that drives musicians and artists on to do new forms of music. But yeah, it could be anything that can inspire me. It could be films. It could be listening to particular forms of music. As I was growing up in the 80s, some of my friends had synthesizers, and I could never afford at the time a synthesizer, but I had a little play on some of their synthesizers at the time. I thought these are amazing. But we're living in an age now where the things that you long to do as a child, like record in a recording studio, you can literally do it in your front room now.
Well, you brought that up, and I hope to hear some stories like this that you might think of. But yeah, so the big thing, they had Junos and stuff, but the big first sampler was the Emulator 2. It was one of the first ones that came out, and I knew this kind of wacko kid, a little bit out, kind of out of his wheelhouse, but he went to Harvard and whatever, and he he had an Emulator too, and I could get him some weed and some beer, and he'd be all happy. And I'd sit and I'd have his cool synthesizer to play and make music on for a couple days. So it was that was the whole thing with they were so darn expensive. Oh my God, he was kind of a rich kid from the suburbs that just had a little extra, whatever. But it was really neat to be able to
an SH101, and that was amazing. My friend had an SH101, Roland SH101. And it's just, I think it was just monophonic, but the sounds that he got from it were incredible.
Yeah. And the Moog, that was about when the Moog came out.
Loads of them together with a drum box and stuff, and had it doing arpeggios and all sorts.
The neat things that you could do, and there's kind of a retro thing where people are getting back into the switchboard kinds of plug it into oscillators and stuff like that. And there's actually some really neat, actually, if you get Native Instruments, have a couple tools that will allow you to create some pretty interesting. It's pretty much the same stuff. It's just all in this digital space.
Hmm.
And I I played around with that a little bit, but that's a whole rabbit hole. You can that's an art form in itself, really playing with all those things. So yeah, that we'll make that another 2025. You can write another program
Brilliant.
about
Look
plugging
forward to it.
synthesizers in.
We were really into Howard Jones at the time, and that sort of stuff, and also um, was it Gary Newman? He
Yeah.
Where I used to live, a place called Yateley. I used to live next to an airport, Blackbush Airport, and apparently he used to have a plane that he used to fly there on Blackbush Airport. So he's in that sort of neck of the woods. But yeah, we were very much into like the sort of early synths and that sort of stuff, and to have it all, coming back in retro form now is fantastic. To be able to use the virtual forms and play those instruments is wonderful.
Yeah, I could kick myself. I had a little mini Moog and I
Oh yeah,
sold it for like $100. And like
uh,
they're like,
it's
you
going to
know,
be worth a small.
5,000 or something like that or whatever it is. They're like crazy, outrageously expensive. But there's nothing that sounds like them. They're really, really, really unique sounding. Now the in the cinematic composing space
Yeah.
is, where is it that you aspire to go with your music? Where do you see what do you want? Where do you want your, what do you want your legacy of your music? Where do you want it heard? Are you, trying to get it recorded by orchestras? Are you trying to get it synchronized for film? Are you just doing it for fun? What's your,
Anything and everything. I'm just enjoying the journey, and anything is a bonus. So I'm learning so much from you guys. I'm new to this really in terms of the cinematic composing side of things, but I'm thoroughly enjoying it and trying to learn as much as I can. I used to love watching films where John Williams was doing the score for the films. I grew up with Star Wars, so we
you did a today in our session, we did a piece styled after John Williams, and you did a wonderful piece today. That was really, I could tell you really
I
enjoyed doing.
enjoyed it.
Yeah, that comes through because the style, trying to emulate his style, is a lot of work to really
Yes.
orchestrate it. It's very meticulous. And
But
because
I was playing with the octatonic scale, and then I suddenly realized if you start to play major chords in the octatonic, you start before long you come up with it's the
yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, you
it's so easy. Oh, so yeah, but
that's how
it's
he stumbled on it. He was, I
well,
mean,
yeah,
he was he is or was, a really skilled pianist. So
yeah.
just sitting down, and he was probably just sat down and played da, 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 all these really fast riffs and stuff like that because he could just do it, and then we're like, oh,
He's
okay,
the
let's put
master.
an orchestra to it.
He's
Make
the
it.
master. But he was using things like Holst as well, the planets. And I grew up, listening to a bit of that. So yeah, it's just that cinematic sound and that orchestral sound. I guess it's something that was always too far out of reach. You could never do it, but now you can. Now all things are possible with digital audio workstations and with VST instruments and soft synths and sampled sounds. Amazing, really, what can be done.
We talked today in our session about a session where Bernard Herrmann was in, and they had an orchestra, a bunch of trumpets,
Hmm.
and they were experimenting with like 3 or 4 different types of mutes. So okay, let's play this with the Harmons, and then we'll put these for the this other mute. And they did the same piece. It was a short little cue, and they did it like 4 or 5 times, something like that. And each time it was subtly different.
Yeah.
Well, think about that. To experiment, okay, so you're the composer and you're trying to hear what that sounds like versus this and how to kind of get that right blend and all that. Well, we're able to do that with a DAW. Now, I mean, you don't have to have 30 musicians there and go through this whole thing in a date booked in a studio, and think of the logistics to coordinate that. And we can sit down and do that. I mean, as an example, I did a cue with these kind of modern strings, and I put in some reverb because it sounded good. I wanted to hear the room. Well, the guy that I was writing it for, he said, "Well, wait, it sounds like they're too far away." So I took out the reverb, and it's like, it's now right in your face. And that's what he was looking for. But, that's so easy to do now compared to what it used to be to do
Yeah,
that. You have a closed string or a far string. And the beauty is with the libraries, you can have the
different
BBC
mic
orchestra
positions.
or another orchestra. You could have the room it was recorded in. You have so many things.
But also with AI these days, you can take out reverb. You can extract the vocals from a tune. It's incredible what can be done now. So yeah, the technology's there. But you asked a question about where I'd like it to go. I'd be happy with anything. So I suppose something like Netflix, to be, or even to start off small and just sort of work your way up. Any sort of composition to any sort of any film would be good, or any clips. So yeah, I'm just learning on the side of actually putting stuff to music to film. That's a new area for me. So that's where I'm just dipping my toes in at the minute. Whereas you got a lot more experience in that field. So
That's
I'm
a
learning.
that's a
I'm
different
learning.
intuition, or intuition, if you will, to,
Yeah,
to pull it to when you're connecting with the film. And that was interesting how you connected today. You connected to your piece to that.
yeah.
But that I don't know. I'm not kind of in the mind space to kind of try and make a prediction,
Mm.
but there are, there's kind of the two approaches. One, you're going to play the music and then you write the music to it, or you write the music and then the editor says, well, that's the right piece, that's not the right piece, right? And they fit it in and make it work based on what they get from a library.
Yeah.
There's probably a combination of both that will be happening in the future. But as we write, uh, you know, getting good at writing for a particular emotion, because you might
Yes.
not get the video that might be like, hey, we're going to hire you to do the music for
Mm.
this video, but I haven't done the video yet. So here's what I
Well,
have in mind. Here's the emotion. Here's the mood, the scene. This is what we want to pull out. This is the story we're telling. And that really, that's part of the big challenge for making this all work.
that is, and I was only reading earlier on today in my cinematic composing notes. I don't know if it was one of Tony's sessions, but someone was saying that John Williams. I know he cues things. He looks at what what are his cues and what he needs to get the timing to. But I'd written down there that he doesn't necessarily write to actually at the same time in terms of when he's composing, he will compose an emotion based upon the time scale that he's got. Is that correct? I'm not quite sure, but
Yeah, I
what.
can't speak to that for John Williams necessarily, but I've heard, things along that lines where composers have to do that. You're giving a spotting cue, or spotting,
Yes,
and you say, okay, so imagine I'm doing a SketchUp of here's the Star Wars and the battle cruisers coming in, and you got this happening, that happened, and then we stop and we have a little dialogue, and then bam, we're going back into a battle scene. So they
yeah,
would have that, and they would have the timing of that, and they're gonna
but not
fit the footage.
necessarily watching it as you're composing, but
Exactly. So it's
knowing
like
that.
that, like what we worked on today was,
Yeah,
theoretically, and people did other things with it, and that's okay. But like a battle scene, right?
yeah,
So as in Art's case, he did a battle scene that connected with, a one-on-one battle scene. My
yeah,
thinking was that, oh my God, you're in a dogfight, you're in chaos where you got all these things going on, too many people,
yeah.
and there's and that was a comment. It's like, hey, there's a lot going on. Well, yeah, there would be if
It
you're
was a great piece you did. It was really good.
but if it's like, so if I got that spotting sheet, you get a spotting sheet of what that is,
Yeah,
what you're trying to do. And that's really I'm getting better at it, but it's always a journey. Like you said, when we get a story, we get a brief. Somebody says, okay, you want to write to this emotion. And
Yeah.
it needs to be 2.5 minutes and it needs to, encompass this. And they give you some reference tracks, but they say, don't sound like the reference tracks. You can't sound like that. But that's what we have, what we
Yeah.
want to.
I
So
give you the inspiration, but yeah, don't
that's the
copy it.
part you kind of go, what? Oh, and then we want edit points. Well, how? So it takes a while to build that kind of intuition and really know what how to translate and read their minds and get into wherever their vision is of what they want to do, writing a cue and or trying to put it to film.
Yeah.
Well, cool. I'm glad you're down for the count on that. So you said John Williams is a big influence of yours. Who are the other composers that you like to listen to?
Well, to be honest, in terms of composers, it's a broad spectrum, but I guess a lot of the music that I've been brought up with has been things like Jean-Michel Jarre, so it's the more sort of synthesizer based music and that sort of stuff. So yeah, Equinox and Oxygen were two albums I listened to a lot, growing up. And again, it's similar to cinematic composing, but
Love the oxygen.
it's using the synth as an instrument.
Yeah,
Sorry,
it's bringing you into a world,
it is, yeah.
and then yeah, I love that.
But also things like Tubular Bells, Jeff Wayne's The War of the Worlds. It's things like that from a cinematic sound point of view. But again, that was it's a musical, but you've got that cinematic orchestral aspect to it. But it's going to be watching the films. But I guess Stravinsky, Bach, all of the greats, Mozart, such skillful composers and stuff. But yeah, the modern stuff is particularly interesting as well, and the jazz side of things as well. I suppose I'm not. Sorry.
You like jazz?
Yeah, I love jazz. Yeah, but it's not a particular style that I'm sort of like hooked into. I like a broad spectrum of stuff, pop music, all sorts of influences.
Yeah, I listened to Demi and JD, Dami and JD.
Okay.
Are you familiar with them?
No, I'm not.
My God, talented jazz folks,
Yes.
just amazing. But it's kind of like if you're not tuned into jazz, and you don't kind of like get John Coltrane and Giant Steps, it just sounds like a bunch of noise because they're going, it's all happening so fast,
Yeah, sure.
But if you from a very technical side in music, that stuff is, you can go, poof, wow, I can dig it. My wife
Yeah,
doesn't like it, but I like it. But a nice little jazz piano quartet or trio, at a hotel, that that kind of, I don't want to say lounge music, but that mellow, that's beautiful jazz. That's easy listening jazz that most people can adapt to that, even though there can be some complexity and using all the voicings, the harmonies, and all those other things. So but again, it depends on emotion that you want to connect to, right? Now you were
giant steps. You see, would be classic Schillinger, really, because it's based upon yes, it's the symmetric system of harmony. It's using
well,
different
you're
tonal.
gonna do a session on that with megachords, right? I mean, that's a whole concept
Mega.
of kind of, which was a lot of what he was doing with Giant Steps, because he was like playing like one progression on the bottom and another progression on the top. It's these stacked chords,
Yeah,
and in harmonic music, um, there's just so much opportunity when you play with that.
there
And,
is. Yeah,
in someone like John Williams, I think, he's taking and extending these. It's using that range from the entire range of your low instruments and your higher instruments. And
to get the full.
Jacob Collier said, whatever you do, there's no rules. It's what feels good. It's
No,
what feels right.
he's
And
such an inspiration, isn't he, Jake
oh,
Collier, to so many
oh,
different
what a
people.
brilliant, brilliant
And he
gift
connects with
to
so many
our world.
different people groups all around the world.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
because he speaks that universal language. He just makes that connection, through music. And
Yeah,
yeah,
and I love all these extended chords that he's doing. Like if you take a C major seven and you put
yeah,
a D major seven on the top of that, you're building on the ninth, and it's like, whoa, that's just so beautiful. And he's doing that, by ear
I
and
know.
harmonizing like that in movements, by ear for voice.
Yeah,
I'm just like, oof, I'm not worthy. I mean, like, it's amazing. I really just appreciate his gift. So
yeah,
I look
yeah.
forward to your session because you're going to pick it apart for us
Really
and
interesting.
share. You're
He
going to
he
use
he came
mathematical mind and do some interesting things.
he came up with a term, I think, that super meta mega Lydian or something. He came up with a long word for the Lydian mega scale, if you like. But yeah, I'm hoping to cover that and to maybe cover a bit more different types of mega scales and how to make mega scales. So yeah, who knows how that's going to go, but I'll give it a go.
So you had mentioned like Netflix or getting on, in a mainstream kind of media with your music. What would be the dream gig for you in music? If you, I mean, some of this is if you
Well,
have
it'd be
if you have a
lovely
lot
to
of
have.
things going on.
Well, you said about the scoring, the free scoring thing. Was it the charity scoring competition? I think the prize is you get an orchestra in Manchester to perform your
Yeah,
piece. So,
that's the YouTube score relief
yeah,
that's
anything. I'm just enjoying the ride. I'm just enjoying learning from others. And what a great community we've got. And I just want to say, if anybody's watching this and you're thinking about joining this community, it's a great community to belong to because you get such inspiration from one another. Every week we get inspiration from each other, and I'm learning loads. So yeah, anything would be good, and to be able to be part of a team. That's the beauty of like film, isn't it? Really, you look at the end credits of any film, and you look at all the people that were involved, and you
gosh.
just think, what a beautiful synchronicity of gifts at the end. To see that all that went into it. No wonder things impress us emotionally when we watch a film. It's not just the visuals you're seeing. It's the emotions of all the chords and everything. It's all that hard work that's gone into every aspect of the filmmaking process. So yeah, I just enjoy creativity, and to be part of a creative community in whatever respect. I just love that really, and to have something to show at the end that you can be proud of, saying, "Well, I had a part to play in that." I think would be wonderful. So anything, any form of
Well,
composition.
that's what I hope we get into with the composer exchange. We're all getting, there's a group of us that meet regular. We're going through a variety of different styles and techniques and learning and growing and getting better and learning from each other.
Yeah,
From that, I use it as a way to write different kinds of cues that I might not just sit down and go, Uh, and like I had mentioned, I've had, I think, of the 12 or 15 that we did or whatever this last year, I had 8 of them signed with the library, or 9 of them, something like that. And so they're getting it's a good exercise for that. But now, if one of us, because we're getting to know each other's
yeah,
work,
yeah.
if one of us got a gig to
Sure.
do, a Star Wars sequel, where we needed a bunch of John Williams as a kind of, battle scenes, if you will,
Mm.
we know the likelihood of this is probably really, really, really small, by the way. But if we got it,
Yeah, dreams.
this particular example, but
Yeah,
uh, but
but
if
it
we
doesn't need to be on that scale. But
yeah,
anything
exactly. Well,
is good.
anyway, when we get a gig that they want, a bunch of love themes, or they want a
Yeah,
series of something, we have a team of people that could put it together, because we have a group of composers that are familiar with enough in style that we can put down a target, and then we can all hit the mark within the range of what would be acceptable. Because what's going to happen is, if you're an established composer where they know what you can do and you're doing it and you're putting your name on it, then they're going to give you a Netflix series, and you're going to be in there like just going nuts for like, every week, for like 12 weeks or 8 episodes, whatever. You're going to come in and you're going to be doing an hour's worth of music every week. That's crazy. That's a lot of work. Okay. But you're going to have the system to be able to do that. Now, in different, kinds of formats where it isn't quite that intense, and they haven't just connected with one composer, they're going to connect with, a team. Then you're going to be kind of, I think Bridget worked on a project like this, where
Oh, nice.
they're taking, okay, we need a scene that's going to have this kind of an emotion, whatever. And then the whole team goes out and writes, and they put in 6, 7, 8,
Yeah.
tunes in there, or cues, and then they have a choice. And instead of they'll pick the better one and then move on to here's the other one. So they're going to have X number of cues for a movie or something like that. And that's how that worked with them.
Well, that'd
And
be good.
because
I'd like
you
to
have
be
that
part of something
diversity,
like that,
yeah.
working in collaboration, and building up my confidence in the whole area.
And the thing is even if your cue doesn't get picked, you had a great experience, and you still have another cue that somebody will take it at some point for something, and that's a matter of organizing your library. So
Exactly.
cool. Well, we're getting kind of close to a wrap up time, and I wanted to say, there's kind of two pieces of this.
Hmm.
What's your favorite library? Do kind of a rapid fire. What's your favorite library?
Well, I like the orchestral tools libraries. I think they're really good, and I used some of the horns from orchestral tools in the composition today, and also one of the strings was from there. So I think they do some really good. But let's be honest, Spitfire Audio are fantastic, aren't they? But it's whatever I can afford is the honest answer. And some of them are presently out of my league in terms of finances, but I can dream.
Well, some of it's how you use it, and kind of what you're writing for too. Some of the Spitfire isn't really good for those close, crunchy quartet unless you buy that quartet library. But they're unique, each of the libraries. So it kind of depends on what you're writing for. You're not
Audio
going to
Imperia sounds really good. It's a broad library. Audio Imperia.
find.
It's a broad library for. I know that Rafal uses that, and it's a nice sound. But you've got some cracking libraries, and you've got some really nice. Not virtual. What are they? The ones that actually mimic that new library that you've got that mimics the.
Oh, the Swam is really wild. That
Oh,
is really wild.
that's got to be the way forward, surely.
I I think, we're gonna go digress here, but I
Let's
think
get
with
onto
what
AI. Come on, you can do it.
yeah, you know where we're going with this.
Yeah, yeah.
Which will bring me to another question here, but
It will replace libraries. It will replace sound libraries, sampled libraries. Long.
I don't think it's going to replace it. But what I'm saying is what they've been able to do with audio modeling and
Yeah.
being able to get that close, and that getting that close to the
Well,
real
yeah.
sounds. Okay, if they can do that kind of audio modeling with combined with artificial intelligence that'll listen
Yes.
to a piece and go, okay, jazz, right? It's going to have a piano bass drums, and it's
Mm.
going to have this, style of playing. It could, you know, if you combine those technologies,
Yeah.
that is going to, you're right. That is going to be an interesting wave of the future for emulating certain kinds of music. I think it's going to be difficult to put in the emotional expression, but they have
I
kind of
think
a
AI will.
randomization.
I
They have
think
a
the AI will progress, and you'll be playing something on the keyboard, and it will sound just like the instrument because the AI will know just from what you've played how it would have been expressed, the most likely
yeah.
way of expressing
because it can listen to, if you wanted to express like Dexter Gordon versus John Coltrane or whatever, for the saxophone, or Wayne Shorter, or you want it to sound like him, it can pull in and pull out the same way that it's doing with art. But I think you hit it on the head. I think the key to being able to have that realistic sound is going to be connecting with the technologies that they figured out how to do with the audio modeling.
Yeah.
Uh, there, because it's really fascinating. Now again, it doesn't quite, it sounds different. It sounds a little bit different than what a sample library is.
It's
And
new
it
technology, isn't it? Really, and so it can only get better.
Yes, and the thing is that they can, like, for example, when we buy a sample library of the BBC orchestra, it's
Mm,
that orchestra in a particular room and it sounds that way.
yeah,
Now, audio, now you listen to another orchestra, they're recording in a different place. It's a different sound of the instruments and a different way of them expressing and playing it. It's a different band, right?
yeah,
Okay. You
yeah,
know, Jethro Tull sounds different than the Jonas Brothers. I mean, you're gonna have different. It's a different band, right? Um,
yeah. It's-
but if it can get to that next level of being able to really kind of pull in from a timbral perspective, I think it'll be really interesting.
yeah.
But yeah, artificial intelligence combined with that technology is really going to be uh, a really interesting experience.
Have you seen some of these jazz things online where you've got uh, jazz tunes or jazz style stuff being sung with modern tunes? So I don't know.
Like jukebox, postmodern jukebox. Oh my God.
Some of the stuff they've got is incredible.
Well, what I've heard is like doing a jazz version of Michael Jackson's Thriller. I'm like,
Yeah, exactly.
my
That's what I'm on
God.
about.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's
Postmodern jukebox. They're amazing at that.
it's
It's
so good.
so Yeah, I come from a musical theater background, so I did 15 years in musical theater, and that's the kind
You'll have
that.
to do one of these podcasts as well on yourself.
Oh no, no, yeah, yeah. I put a little bit out in every
I'll have
one.
to interview you.
They hear enough of my stories. So, speaking of stories, what is the wildest, craziest, silliest story that happened to you related to music?
Wildest, silliest story. Um, I can't think. Nothing springs to mind. I'm just trying to think. I
Weird
suppose.
thing happened in a church service while you're playing that.
I guess in a church service, the first time I ever played guitar was pretty wild. In terms of, um, I was so nervous. You know what it's like when you're live performing, and if you've never done it before and it's your first time, it felt like my whole right arm had gone numb and I lost complete control of it. I wasn't, it was moving all over the place. At the points in the service where everyone stopped singing and you could hear my guitar, I was so nervous. But you build confidence, don't you? It's like anything. And maybe someone's watching this today and thinking, well, I could never do composition. I think, give things a go and just gradually build up your confidence, isn't it? That's what I did with the guitar, and now I play in front of people every Sunday without. There's no anxiety there, but initially, I'd be so nervous about playing in front of people. It was crazy, really. But yeah, it's
You know, an early girlfriend, I would make these little tapes, and she played flute in high school. I
yeah,
taught her how to play a scale, and she would play along with the tapes, and that was like her form of meditation. Oh my God. And my wife, she kind of does the same thing, kind of sitting around playing harmonica in her car.
yeah,
And I was thinking, and you're a spiritual person. I'm not a religious person, but I have a strong faith, but it comes from music.
yes,
Prayer and my everything. I mean, I'm a scientist. I believe in science.
yeah,
Everything down to the smallest molecule, or everything that we know, comes
mm,
down to a vibration. And
sure,
and music is so, it's the connection, our connection to the universe.
yeah,
And so for me, in my connection to music, it's enabled me to find my spirituality and find my center and find myself. And that's where, I can, it's kind of like, tuning your guitar. I kind of like tune myself based
Yeah.
on music. And how do you see that work in your world, being more of a man of faith and then having music and this vibration? Give me a little exploration on that, and then
It sounds like you're speaking about something like the music of the spheres, and there is that whole theory, isn't there, which goes through a lot of different religions, that everything comes down to vibrations. I'm although I have a faith, I'm very much into science as well, and I don't see that there's any discrepancy between having faith and science. I think the two, uh, you know, fit well together in terms of.
additionally they haven't, because faith,
Oh,
they've
boys.
used they've used don't dance, don't music, uh there's been a conflict between science and the church.
Yeah,
I
I
think
guess
that's
that's the
more of the
fear thing,
human
isn't it?
side, though. that's
Sorry,
the that's the human. I'm interpreting this for my own benefit and my
it's
control.
traditions, isn't it? Really, it's a fear thing. It's a
It's
fear
not
that
the faith exactly.
if you get into dance, then you're becoming ungodly or anything like that. But I suppose we're a modern church. We use modern instruments. But I think as long as what you're doing is not against your faith, you're not singing bad things about God. You're singing praises to God, and the Bible's full of encouragement to dance, to clap, to make a joyful noise. I think God wants us to be creative and wants us to enjoy His creation. But yeah, you're saying about vibrations. I would say, well, my belief is that God is the one that creates those vibrations in the first place, so that He holds all things together. Some people would say it's God. Some people would say it's science. Some people would say it's God through science. There's different ways of looking
It
at
was
it.
the Beach Boys that came up with good vibrations or something like that.
Vibrations, yes. uh,
Well,
I,
what,
I've just thought of it. You said about what's your wildest musical moment. There was a time when, as a Christian band, we were asked to lead the carols in a hospital. There's a big local hospital, and we were there. The place was packed with people, and we were doing this song, and I can't remember what song it was, but I was aware that the person that was leading us and was leading the singing of this song, he only knew the lyrics of the first verse, and we were on the second verse, and he was just making making up the lyrics of each line, and I was aware that he was making the lyrics up. And I think I was the only one who realised that he managed to pull it off, and everything seemed to rhyme and seemed to fit well. But he completely ad-libbed it and just made up the verse 2 on the spot, which was really impressive. But I was like panicking as I was playing the bass guitar. So yeah, interesting days.
well, that's cool. I don't think anybody that has been a live musician or plans to be a live musician will not be able to perform music without some kind of story of weirdness or strangeness.
There's always a plane crash somewhere, isn't there? A train crash, not plane crash, a train crash moment.
There's
I think
always
I've been in a band once where we were playing. Someone was playing in the wrong key, and that's never good, is it?
oh yeah. Well,
Oh, once we set up, we were doing a school assembly, and we took so long setting up that just as because we had a few technical problems, just as we were about to start, and we got everything ready, the guy that was leading said, "Oh, it's all ready now." And just as he said that, the bell went for the end of assembly. It was brilliant.
cool. Well, Stuart, I really appreciate you taking the time, getting to know you a little better, sharing your stories with our audience. And before we go, do you have any quick words of wisdom for anybody that wants to be inspired by music and get involved?
Keep on keeping on. Keep on searching. Be bold. Make the steps forward. Get in contact with us here. With the composition group that we're part of. You'll love it, and you'll be very welcome. And it doesn't matter where you're at. Like Jacob Collier said, we're all producing music, and there is, in a sense, there is no right and wrong music. If it's music to us, it's self-expression. It's wonderful. So just keep composing and keep coming up with new things.
If it feels good, do it. Thank you, Stuart Wheatman.
Thank you so much, Christopher.
Live life on a high note and stay sharp. We'll see you next time on the high note. Be good, everybody.